Welcome to Life is for Living. I'm your host, Kylee Buckley, and I'm here with David Riddell from the School of Living Wisdom. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
So, tonight we've had a request to talk about nature versus nurture and your thoughts on it. It's an interesting topic, isn't it? You can have three children from the same family, brought up the same, but turn out completely differently.
It is a fascinating topic. And right from the outset, let's introduce a new word for some. The word is reciprocity. And reciprocity or reciprocal means that we've got an interplay or a dialogue going on between what you're learning and how you're nurtured and your genetic inheritance. So it really starts by being careful to choose your parents because there's where your nature comes from. And yes, it is genetic, it is inherited, and every mother will tell you that every baby is different and shows a different nature right from the get-go. So we know that in the early years, nature dominates. But there's something of an eclipse that happens as the child grows, because where nature was priority and nurture factored, because nurture can begin even in the womb. Nurture can begin from the very early days. And we know that sometimes a breech birth baby can be claustrophobic, or a baby traumatized from a lack of oxygen, or separated from parents. There's a gap in the nurture already. There's an attachment injury. There's a loss of bonding. So already now, and the baby's only a few days old, we've got nurture having its impact. I'm also convinced that even from the womb, a baby can develop appreciation for mummy's voice and for music. And what we find too is that in the nursery, a nice, calm, quiet nursery helps to develop a placid baby. But a dramatic, drama-filled family can also set up stress. And those early days of a stressed family can also begin to eclipse nature. So a baby born with a peaceful nature may well turn into a little stress ball by the time they're 12 months old. So it kicks in really early, and this dialogue is going on all the time. A strong-willed child can become a persistent adult, or a strong-willed child can become a rebel, depending on how that nature-given quality of persistence is nurtured. They can become extremely stubborn and very, very willful, or they can become a leader. And it's no surprise to discover that parenting a strong-willed child is a far different cry from parenting a really placid child. And some mothers get the strong-willed variety, and some get the placid variety, and it makes a great difference to just how enjoyable mothering can be, uh, given that the child already has that nature component. So we are wanting to help parents take their nurturing role very seriously, because otherwise it can be chaos right from the start. And when a mother holds up a baby and thinks, this baby is going to ruin my life, well, the baby's got grounds for looking at the mother and thinking the same thing. And we're off to a toxic start, which is not good. Rejection from the womb or rejection from babyhood is a real thing. Attachment injury is a real thing. Defensive detachment is a real thing. And there's no doubt that the loss of basic trust in a baby has very real and significant overtones for the rest of that child's life. When you lose basic trust as a child, nurture is needed to restore it. And if the nurture isn't there, then the nature takes over and becomes somewhat feral. And being a feral child myself, I know what it is to have to reparent myself, to give back to myself the nurture that I missed out on as a kid.
Mhm.
They talk about men who are womanizers. Often that's a man who's grieving for lost mothering, lost feminine affection, yearning, craving, desire, feminine touch, comfort, and affirmation. And the loss and lack of that can result in sexual addiction, can result in multiple affairs, can result in chaos later. And conversely, when a child, a little girl misses daddy's affirmation and daddy's validation, she may become trouser hungry for the rest of her life as she looks for that blessing that can only come from a man. And so we are dealing here with a reciprocity. We are dealing here with a transition zone. As I say, to begin with, it's more about nature. By the time they're 12 or 15, it's more about nurture. They've kind of swapped roles in importance, shall we say. Does that make sense, Kylie?
Yes, yes, you've opened up a whole different area of my mind that I'd never opened before, never heard.
That's what I do.
So is it different than like we've got two parents working all the time at the moment. This is probably a lot of the issues in society, I suppose. The bonding process is not strong like it would have been in the good old days. Are you finding that that's having an impact, or is it not so much just going to work? It's more the family dynamics and what's happening within the walls when everyone is at home.
Oh, it's certainly got a lot to do with mothers feeling pushed out to work by any kind of pressure, including the pressure of their own need for an identity and a vocation. It's certainly attachment injury can be attributed to mothers going off to work and not being there for babies and young children when they need it. That's the modern day pressure. But the olden day pressure was mothers dying in childbirth or parents dying at a young age of typhoid or plague or whatever. In the olden days, there was horse and cart accidents, there was fires. There's always been children with attachment injury. There's always been orphans. There's always been kids left to parent themselves who couldn't manage it. It's just that the reasons for that has changed.
Right.
Uh, for me, the tragic thing is that a mother who doesn't actually have to deprive her child of bonding does so under the duress of meeting the mortgage payments or trying to pull her weight or trying to keep up with the men. And that's a very sad thing. I think that if you can nurture a child till they're 5 years of age and then turn them over to teachers, they won't suffer anything like the child that is already feeling abandoned at 2 years old.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember even young boys that were sent off to prep school as a boarding school establishment as young as 7 or 8. They were always injured by that. And even at 12 years of age, some boys are not ready for boarding school and some girls are not ready for boarding school. When parents ask me about boarding school, I say it depends on the child. Some children take to boarding school like a duck to water, and others just sit there and grieve like crazy for the first 12 months and always feel injured by it. So you've got to read the child. How self-confident are they? How secure are they? And the chances are that if they were well nurtured and parented in the first 5, 6, 7 years of age, then they are secure enough in themselves to cope far better with being rejected or excluded or bereaved further down the track.
Yeah. Right.
It's a big deal, those first 7 years. I can't overestimate how impacting they really are in the formation of the child's emotional character.
From your experience, what would be the most common ailment on people going off the rails to do with nature nurture, to do with the fact, is it in New Zealand here particularly? Do
Well,
we
the
have as a nation a really bad issue in an area, or is it across the board?
Well, the common factor in misbehaving children or children not adjusting to life is poor parenting. And when I say poor parenting, I'm not having a go at the parents. Often they're just passing on the lack of life skills that they themselves inherited. But when I'm talking poor parenting, I'm talking about things that are pretty obvious if you stop and think about it. I'm
Mm,
talking about children who never have to get used to disappointment. So they never learn the meaning of no. They never learn how to face disappointment. They never learn how to face restriction, and they never learn how to grieve. And because they can't grieve because of the word no, and because they never hear the word no, or they don't have to hear no, then they think their throat's been cut from ear to ear when they can't have what they want, they can't get what they want.
mhm,
And so they just tantrum, and there's rage, and there's antisocial. That's certainly one big problem. Another one is the lack of masculine validation.
yeah.
Fathers are needed to affirm, fathers are needed to give courage, fathers are needed to believe in their children and to value their children. Fathers' validation um, is unique to fathers.
Mhm.
And when a son doesn't get that kind of backup, that kind of encouragement, that kind of reassurance, building blocks of their heart are totally missed out. And it's not just the boys, daughters too need that masculine validation and that masculine presence to
Mhm.
back mother up to maintain order and respect. When mums have to fight for respect with no masculine backup, they often lose the battle. They often lose that cooperation and that trust from their children that they need to have. And,
Mhm.
and so it can turn to chaos, and pretty soon mum wants to send the children back to wherever they came from. But there's no address, so they are stuck with them.
Yes, that is so typical, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very sad too. But that is when they talk about New Zealand having the highest rate of teenage suicide in the world, I put it straight down to fathers asleep at the wheel, fathers AWOL, fathers abdicating their role and responsibility, and absent dad syndrome. And I often think that ADD should be known as absent dad disorder.
Oh dear, yes. Very, very true. Well, there's a lot there to think about. So that's nature versus nurture, guys. Thank you, David.
Interesting topic, a big topic, very important topic, and that's why I've written a chapter called Reparenting Yourself. Because if your parents didn't do the job, my study can give you a strategy on how to reparent yourself
Mhm.
and do so in the name of Father God. So if you want that study, you can email and we can get that to you. Send me an email on office@livingwisdom.co.nz. I'll be happy to send that study back on reparenting yourself.
Excellent.
No charge for that.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.